The frenetic excitement of future potential is omnipresent and contagious. Better than food, man. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Better Than Food Book Reviews. I'm your host, Cliff Sargent. Great to see you as always. Today is Alvin Toffler's The Third Wave. I now live in Detroit. A fallen second wave auto industry empire that now appears to be rising again in the third wave. As you may know, the city had a massive decline. Looking in from the outside, you'd think it was hell on earth. Abandoned houses and factories, arson, crime, roaming gangs of pit bulls. Yes, it's there, or it was. But it's literally changing right outside. Like, right outside my fucking window. My life sounds like an Einstürzende Neubauten album every day. Ford just announced it would put $740 million into the train station, which I can see out my window. It's just a few blocks away. The structure will be used for Ford's autonomous automobile division. So reading this right here, right now, I can't help but feel directly in the center of the third wave. The dawn of this new civilization is the single most explosive fact of our lifetimes. It is the central event, the key to understanding the years immediately ahead. It is an event as profound as that first wave of change unleashed 10,000 years ago by the invention of agriculture, or the earth-shaking second wave of change touched off by the Industrial Revolution. We are the children of the next transformation, the third wave. How's that for chapter 1? This book is a massive tome of impressive discussion on how the third wave is changing the workplace and the workforce, education, technology, information, politics, and the world. This is also the book that inspired the musical genre name techno from the chapter Techno Rebels, which can be found on page 149. Patience is a virtue with this one. It will take a while. It took me several months on and off. It should be required reading for anyone who's interested in where we've come from as a culture and where we're going, or where we may be going. It's all about change and its impact on society and on us, on our relationships on a cultural, local, and national level. The third wave means changes in the family, marriage, gender roles, everything. Toffler discusses many things that characterize the third wave, but one of the biggest differences from the second wave is the focus on the individual. No more mass consumption, mass systemization, mass standardization. Also a movement towards more flexible work schedules and working from home. And the rise of the prosumer, as in one who produces and consumes those products as opposed to just a consumer. It's an attempt to illustrate all the changes that were happening in our culture from the first wave, the agricultural revolution, onward. All the chapters have these cool names. The Vermilion Pagoda, the Technological Womb, Blip Culture, Industriality, that's a good one. Very William Gibson. It's dramatic, but, I like that kind of stuff. It was published in 1980, but it's still extremely relevant, and it seems to have predicted quite a bit with disturbing accuracy. Toffler foresaw the internet and the switch from working in the factory to the home, but also the demassification and the personalization of entertainment and information that comes with that. The increased demand for meaningful work that has an impact. We need structure, community, and meaning, which is why cults work, and there's a great part on cults. And he also foresaw this epidemic of loneliness that we're seeing, this digital alienation. Much of it is about the end of the second wave and the transition to the third. He describes the waves as follows, and the transition from the second to the third isn't clear. We're still in it, probably. I'm not sure. There might be a fourth one that he mentioned elsewhere, but I think that one involves space. Maybe Elon Musk's vision come true. The first wave was agrarian, the agricultural revolution 10,000 years ago, post-hunter-gatherer society. The second was industry, the industrial revolution, measurement, progress, standardization, Ford, right? Manufacturing empires, the nuclear family, corporations, big, 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 big. Sell it, we don't care what it does to the environment as long as it keeps generating that cash. It took us a long time to get to the first, and the second was just like explosion. We had some big explosions in the middle of the second. Started moving so fast, we started making things that could kill everybody on Earth. Introduction of MAD, mutually assured destruction. That was definitely part of the second wave. Got all kinds of stuff. Holocaust. But you also had revolutions and beautiful, beautiful creations that allowed for the flourishing of humans on Earth. The third wave is information and technology based. It's what we're all in the middle of right now. So much of this is about acceleration, right? And it's hard being, right in the middle of it, not knowing anything else. But I mean, you just study a little bit of the 20th century and a little bit before that, and you're just like, whoa, man, this is moving really fast. I mean, you can feel it. Obviously, it feels fast. I mean, I can barely get a grip on life, but it's not just you if you're feeling a little anxiety over it. In this interview I've linked to, Toffler said, "We're suffering from a bombardment of headlines and blips of information and bits and pieces, and it was necessary for someone to stand back and take a really long view of where we stand at the moment, and that's what I tried to do in the third wave." And that was back then in 1980. Imagine now, when we're all plugged in, everywhere, all the time, 24/7. It's enough to give you a panic attack. And I'm drinking coffee at night. Doesn't really help, but it's delicious. The problem is, for Toffler, that we've established so many of our institutions, so many of our most important components of politics that so long ago in the second wave that they've become completely obsolete. The world back then is a different world. I mean, unrecognizable to us today, completely. So he asks some pretty simple but profound questions. Like, how could one presidential candidate possibly represent half the country? Or, the entire country. How could one man represent the needs of all of us? It seems that when Toffler was writing this, he really believed that nobody can get anything done, neither the president nor the people under him. Toffler argues that there needs to be a structural overhaul, a total rethinking of our political system, with respect to the fact that the need to do so is the same need felt by those who set up the original systems. They needed to come up with something new. So do we. But those systems were for their time then, which looks very different from our time now. Of course, not everything he suspected could happen did happen. There are no underwater cities, unfortunately, but enough did for the book to be very impressive. One of the biggest takeaways for me was the necessary reminder that what may seem new, dramatically new, radically new right now, has often happened in the past. A lot. Usually with pretty bad results, to the point where it's been repeated so many times that it's a cliche, if you just look back and see how things play themselves out. So, and yet still we fall into these bad habits. It's like when our parents try and warn us about something and we still go and do it anyways. We think we're going to get different results. Maybe we do, and then history has changed, or maybe it's just the same old shit. It does make me think of the George Santayana quote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." It's a lot of stuff to remember in there. But Toffler gives us an excellent idea of how things connect historically. So much of the book is about recognizing patterns and interrupting patterns. His book inspires us to think about what exactly it is that we're repeating. It's valuable information. It's very valuable for somebody to actually try to make a really ambitious attempt at collecting all of this information and synthesizing it into a coherent book, to a big discussion, to kind of just plot this out on a grid to show us where we come from and where we're at. And I mean, obviously he's truncating so much history to get in, but still the book is like 400 and something pages and it's like dense. I mean, we're talking like tiny, tiny font text. When this book was published in 1980, there were 4.4 billion people on the planet. Today, there are 7.4 billion. I'd call that a significant change. Short amount of time. Yep. Alvin Toffler was an American writer and futurist. He was born in New York and unfortunately passed away a couple years back in LA. In his 20s, he and his wife moved from New York and worked in separate factories for something like 5 years. He worked as, among other things, an assembly hand, a millwright, and a welder. But it was a kind of research for them. It was a break from the intellectual academic thing, and gave Toffler insight and perspective, as well as injuries. A New York Times article said that Mr. Toffler learned to weld and repair machinery and came to understand in the most personal way the toll that physical labor can have on industrial workers. He broke a vertebra when a steel beam he was helping to unload twisted unexpectedly and fell on him. So Toffler wasn't just writing about it, he was living it. And while he acknowledges the inevitable conflicts brought him with the change and everything, for him there's very good reason to welcome the third wave. This is from his time in the factory. I swallowed the dust, the sweat, and smoke of the foundry, My ears were split by the hiss of steam, the clank of chains, the roar of pug mills. I felt the heat as the white-hot steel poured. Acetylene sparks left burn marks on my legs. I turned out thousands of pieces a shift on a press, repeating identical movements until my mind and muscles shrieked. I watched the managers who kept the workers in their place, white-shirted men themselves endlessly pursued and harried by higher-ups. I helped lift a 65-year-old woman out of the bloody machine that had just torn 4 fingers off her hand, and I still hear her cries, "Jesus and Mary, I won't be able to work again." The factory. Long live the factory. Today, even as new factories are being built, the civilization that made the factory into a cathedral is dying. And somewhere, right now, other young men and women are driving through the night into the heart of the emergent third-wave civilization. Our task from here on will be to join, as it were, their quest for tomorrow. The frenetic excitement of future potential is omnipresent and contagious. What does it all mean for us? I have no idea. And Toffler doesn't either. But he seems to believe that we need to change ourselves on an individual level and not hand off the work to someone else. There's no Messiah, as he puts it, coming to save us, politically or culturally. But there's people who will, come in when there's conflict and say they're the Messiah, or at least make you think it. The best we can do, it seems, is to educate ourselves about what's happened, where we come from, and where we are currently. So we learn to recognize some of our previous terrible mistakes before they're repeated. And that's that. So, the third wave influenced the title of a music genre that Detroit has become famous for. The guys responsible for its creation, Juan Atkins, Derek May, and Kevin Saunderson, called the Belleville Three, were influenced by stuff like Kraftwerk, and one of them, Juan Atkins, was reading Toffler and named the genre techno after the chapter The Techno Rebels. It's not EDM, it's not house, it's not electro, it's not Skrillex, it's Detroit techno. I've actually created a little playlist for y'all in the description box below on Spotify. And the fellow whose music I used in this review for the segment of all the footage from Detroit is based here, and he is dope as hell. Just listen to Juan Atkins' project Cybotron with Alleys of Your Mind, or Strings of Life by Derek May. And my personal favorite of all time, Charivari by a number of names. Well, Charivari and no UFOs, but Charivari is incredible. It's like this, you could totally see the Italo disco influence. And I mean, it's just like the most amazing early techno song. I mean, it's just, when I heard the first words in that song, I just had the biggest grin on my face. I mean, I could just automatically sense a classic. Some bread and cheese and fine white wine. Detroit was all about industry, about second wave technology and the future. It's where Ford introduced the Model T to the world. It only makes sense that techno was born here, fusing the emotional and psychological with the technological and industrial, but influenced by stuff out of Germany. So who should read it? If you're a fan of William Gibson, Aldous Huxley, or George Orwell, definitely. Or if you're interested in 20th century industry and its relationship to everything going on right now, understanding the Industrial Revolution, definitely check this out. And if you enjoy techno, or you never knew the history but are interested now, it's absolutely essential, 100%. Better than food. Now who's gonna get it for the coffee lottery? Coffee lottery, for those of you who are new, is where I take all the names of the patrons on Patreon who have donated $5 or more to the show, and I place them in this mason jar, and I pull out a name for every review that I do. And whoever's name I pull out, I send them a hard copy of the book I'm reviewing, plus a bag of coffee, roasted by yours truly. And the coffee is delicious. Thank you to everybody who has donated to the show already. If you'd like to get in on that, you can head to the description box below and click on the link and donate $5 or more on Patreon. $1 or more will get you access to the Patreon-only reviews. Thank you to everyone who has supported the show, and good luck. All right, here we go. Come on, who's gonna get it? Oh, Eldris. Thanks a bunch for the help, Eldris. Really appreciate it. You're going to get Alvin Toffler's The Third Wave, plus a bag of delicious coffee. And I really appreciate the support, seriously. Please subscribe if you have not already. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. A like on Facebook would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. All right. Always remember, die reading. Hope you're enjoying your October. Great to see you as always. Have a great night. Talk to you soon. Take care. Ciao.